Talofa Areti. I'm excited to hear about this new project, A History on Maori Catholics. Can you tell me what this project is about?
Talofa, Mel. Yeah, this is a long overdue project. We're really wanting to capture some of the stories of some key Catholic Māori leaders in the history of Aotearoa. And really it's an opportunity to have a resource, probably a book, and also some website material for schools to use, for teachers to use, but also for any Catholics who are interested in the history of the church here in Aotearoa.
Where did this idea come from and what do you hope to achieve from it?
Well, in my job at Te Kupenga, I travel around the country quite a lot and I meet with school principals, I meet with priests, I meet with teachers and students, sometimes the bishops. And on one of my trips recently, someone said to me, "Oh, Areti, is there a list of all the nuns and all the priests who've ever been Māori, all the Māori nuns and priests in Aotearoa, is there a list of these available?" And I sort of thought, I better go and find that out because I haven't seen one myself. I came back to the office in Wellington, I started to look up for that, to see if I can find this information. I couldn't find it anywhere. I asked a few people where I could find this information. It really wasn't available and it made me think, okay, how do we find a way to capture the stories of all the priests, all the nuns, all the brothers who have ever been Māori and have that available for people to learn from? And it's more than just a list of names, it's also trying to capture some of the stories of key Māori Catholic leaders, people such as Dame Whina Cooper, people such as the first Māori priest, Pāwiramu Te Awhitu, and others.
I know there have been many books written about church leaders. I'm thinking of a biography of Brother Sir Pat Lynch and one on Mother Suzanne Aubert. Is the book going to be a bit like those?
Yeah, it sort of is. The difference, of course, is this book is going to cover a number of Māori Catholic leaders. So people such as Dame Whina Cooper, people such as Pāwiramu Te Awhitu, the first Māori priest, people such as Dame Georgina Kingi, who's the principal of Hatohohepa, St. Joseph's Māori Girls' College in Napier. And so this is capturing a number of stories and trying to give people an insight into different kōrero, different history around the country, so of different Māori leaders from across the country.
There have been some Māori priests and also nuns, but has there been a Māori bishop?
That's a very good question, Mel. We have had one Māori bishop. Bishop Max Takuira Mariu was the Māori bishop. He was the auxiliary bishop of Hamilton, that was his official role, but of course, being the only Māori bishop, he had a national role in terms of connecting to the Māori Catholic communities across the country. So Bishop Max was also an old boy of Hatopaura College, where I went, and is one of the probably half a dozen or so Māori who have actually been a priest in the history of our country.
Did you know Bishop Maru?
Yes, I did. Of course, as I mentioned, he was an old boy of Hatopaura College, where I went in Fielding. And also he was a bit of a mentor of mine and someone who many Māori Catholic communities around the country look to for leadership and guidance in his role as a bishop. Even though he was based in Hamilton, he really had a national role supporting our Māori Catholic communities across the country.
Okay, so since you mentioned Hatopaura, I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about the Māori schools. I know there used to be 3 Māori boarding schools, Hatopetera in Auckland, St. Joe's in Napier and Hatopaura in Fielding, but there are only 2 right now.
Yes, that's a real shame actually. Hatopetera in Auckland is no longer open, and Hatopetera was the co-ed school for Māori, so men and women were at that school. Hatopaura in Fielding, of course, is the Māori boys' school, and St. Joseph's Māori Girls' College or Hatohohepa in Napier is the Māori girls' school. And these schools are really important. They're a really important part of the history of the church in Aotearoa because they are the only 3 Catholic Māori schools, and now there are only 2, although there's some talk that hopefully one day in the future Hatopetera will reopen, and that would be great. These schools have been schools where Māori priests and nuns have come out of. As I mentioned before, Bishop Max was at Hatopaura, but also there are priests like Father Hemi Hekiera, Father Karaitiana Kingi and others who came out of that school. And these schools have played a really important role over many years in nurturing and educating the next generation of Maori leaders. So you've got people who've been doctors, nurses, teachers, politicians who've come from some of these schools. And so I think they're really important schools. They're special because of the important role they have as Maori Catholic schools.
So back to the project, who is actually involved in it?
Well, yeah, the project is being led by an Auckland-based historian, Dr. Rowan Light. Dr. Light has been doing some work on Maori communities and also in relation to Bishop Pompelia. He's been doing a project up in the far north. Dr. Light's really leading the work as a researcher and being supported mostly by me in my spare time. I'm helping him by doing some of the chapters, some of the stories of some of the people that we're featuring, and he's bringing the project together. We've engaged him. He actually works at the university in Auckland, but is doing this as a side project to help us out to try and get. So we've got a really strong historical history expert looking at it with us.
That's great. I'm sure there are lots of work involved in this research. When is it going to be completed?
Yeah, that's another very good question. The plan is to have the book finished by the end of the year, and that means spending a bit of time working on the different aspects of it, because this book involves visits to certain sites, capturing photos, getting archival photos, also interviewing people and trying to access the information that's already available written about people. So I'm not a historian, that's what Dr. Light's expertise is, but my area of interest is particularly capturing important imagery, photos and kōrero from the people who knew the people or people who are experts on the people. So for example, one of the people that we're studying we're researching is Irina Te Ara o Rehua. She was a kaumātua rangatira from the Fielding area where I'm from. Now she passed away in 1921, and so obviously most people alive now didn't know her, and the way we can get information about her is going through different records and finding archives, and of course trying to capture really good quality photos that people have of her, including a beautiful painting that's available at the Marae in Fielding, which we're going to try and get permission to get an actual copy of for our resources.
One last question. What do you hope this book and website will achieve?
Well, really what I'd love it to achieve is I really want every student in a Catholic school to know the names of some of the key Maori Catholic leaders in the history of our country. Of course, we expect Catholic school students to know who the Pope is. We expect them to know who their local patron saint is, the patron saint of the school. We expect them to know who Bishop Pompelia was. And for me, it's just as important that people know who Bishop Maru was. People know who the first Maori priest was, who the first Maori nun was. Those sorts of stories, I would love it if every Catholic student in every Catholic school in the country knew a little bit more about that, because actually by them knowing that, they know more about the history of the church in their country, the unique history of Aotearoa's church.
Tēnā koe, Areti. Thank you for this, and I look forward to reading the book.
Kia ora, Mel. Thank you very much, and thanks for your interest in this project. My hope is that our next project will be a history on Pasifika Catholic communities.